Hello everyone, Lewis Weber here with Behavior Care. In this segment, we are going to take a look at the new version of TPS for middle and high school. A lot of changes for this year, and so let's get right into it and see what these changes are. First thing, you can see where the cursor is, makeup dates. Last year we had some hurricane makeup dates, and there wasn't a place to put that information in TPS because the calendars are established in the beginning of the school year. So this year we have four makeup dates. Hopefully we don't have to use them. But if we do have a makeup date, let's say I'm looking at the calendar, February 19th is President's Day. Let's say the district said that due to a hurricane sometime in December, there was a makeup date we needed to have, and it would be February 19th, 2024. Okay, when I enter that date there, what that does is it assigns a makeup date to all of the recording periods. And I'm just going to click on period 1, and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom because that's where it puts it. Got to know that. And there it is, makeup dates, February 19th. And this gives you an opportunity to enter TPS data in this makeup date section. Now these dates are not included in regular TPS, so the data are not going to be graphed. All graphs occur or are linked to these calendar dates that are above here. So what this does is it gives you a place to put your TPS ratings and your notes in TPS rather than somewhere else, and it allows you to assign the makeup date, which is not known in advance. And so you can put 4 makeup dates. If you go back and enter another makeup date, it will just list it right below, so you can have 4 of them. Hopefully we don't need any of them. Okay, so let's just go right back to this. And the next thing to talk about, let's go back to one of our data entry tabs. I'm going to scroll back up to the top, and I want to point out that the notes section has been expanded. It's been widened, and it also has a new feature, which is a word wrap feature. And I'm just going to go ahead and enter some gibberish here. And we'll go, let's say, that far. We don't want to go more than these 2 rows. The notes are important, but we want to limit it to that much text. The reason why, or reasons why, is it takes a lot of time to write notes, and we want the data to be most representative. We want the notes to provide additional information. We want the TPS ratings to be the primary form of data. Well, when you hit enter, you see what's going to happen here is that it expands the row height to accommodate that. Of course, it expands it all the way across here, and this way you can see the entire note here. Of course, you were always able to see it in the formula bar, but this way you can see it in the actual notes section. Last year it did not have the word wrap feature, and so it extended out and was truncated by this hidden area of Excel. Okay, so that is a nice new feature, and we can see here that there is a new column for event codes. Let's take a look at where that comes from, and then we'll come back to it. When we go to Setup and scroll to the right, we see that there are 2 new sections, event codes 10 through 29, which are event codes that have been used in the elementary and self-contained version for a few years. And we have additional event codes, which is part of the PTR process that will be disseminated this year, prevent, teach, reinforce. And we'll talk more about that another time. These codes are the ones you can use immediately, and what it allows you to do, or a teacher who is collecting TPS data, is to record situations that are triggers or antecedents for a student's behavior challenge. And they're common triggers. And I think your teachers will enjoy using the codes as opposed to writing about it in the notes section. And so here's an example. We had some student had some behavior challenges out of the assigned area, some verbal aggression. What were the triggers for that? Well, event codes 10, 12, and 13. When you go back to setup, we see that there was a social conflict with a peer, an unwanted task demand, and then the teacher asked the student for some compliance with the teacher's request, and that was the trigger for these behavior challenges. Now you can see in this example there's a space in between the comma and the next code. So 10 comma space 12 comma space 13. That space is just for your clarity. It's a preference. TPS doesn't require it. So in this next row I show you, you can just put 12 comma 13 without any space. TPS considers these to be identical formats. So here we have a 12, a 13, and a 14. And what was that? Well, unwanted task demand, teacher's request for compliance, and an inability to control a situation. So this is a very efficient way to record antecedent, triggering, context, situations, all those kinds of words. It allows the teacher great efficiency in recording those. And because they're encoded by numbers, because we're using these codes, we get to summarize them. It's hard to summarize notes because the words vary too much, but when we use codes, we get to use more conveniently math to summarize it. And here we have a list of all of our codes on the bottom and the quantity of each code for the year. So we see there have been 2 occurrences of code 10 and so forth. A nice graph to display the kinds of triggers or antecedent conditions for students' behavior challenges. P3 is a little bit more detailed because it now provides you a count, but it still has the total for the year, but now it counts them per recording period, which is really handy. So if you find that a particular recording period has a particular kind of antecedent condition, that will inform your interventions, and you can update them with that kind of information, which you wouldn't be able to do in a convenient way, at least, if you had to rely on extracting that information from notes. So this is a great summary of antecedent conditions for you. I think your teachers and you will enjoy using that information. All right, let's go back to setup. I'm going to scroll to the right just a little bit because I want to show this IEP tab on my display here. And what I'm going to do is scroll to the left to see the next big area of improvement. This is a significant addition to TPS, and what it's doing now is it's allowing you to create a rubric from within TPS. Last year, prior years, the rubric writer was a separate application. Now it's installed in TPS. So let's take a look at that because there are a number of different ways to use it. Let's go with the simplest way of using TPS, and that is to say without using the rubric, because some of you may not want to use it. So all you do is enter your increasing target and your priority or focus behaviors. Now it notes here that this is going to be added to the rubric and the IEP goals. But if you're not going to use the rubric, I just want to show you that you enter your increasing and decreasing targets as you always have. You enter the priority or focus behaviors relating to that increasing target or decreasing target. And these words here are going to populate the IEP goal. So that's the first thing we're going to look at. So you can see here I've put in pretty common increasing and decreasing targets. These behaviors right here you will need to enter specifically for the student that you're working with. Now there are some general themes, and maybe these words are useful for all your students, but you want to make sure that they're customized to match each student's needs. So what does it look like for verbal aggression for that student and physical aggression for others for that student? So these words here, when you go to the IEP, are going to, let's update it, are going to be added to the IEP text. So using a 0 to 4 rating rubric, and it goes ahead and explains that, Pete will increase the percentage of rating points earned for respect observed as, and this is where those additional priority behaviors are listed, follows teacher's request for action, includes others' needs in decision making. So those words were put in from the setup tab right here. Okay, so that's how it currently works, and I wanted to review that because we will call that the first level of using the increasing behaviors and the priority focus behaviors. Now let's go to the second level. If you click on one of these rows here, you'll see that there's a little arrow. And if you click on the arrow, it lists all of the words that are in the rubric, which would be the master rubric increasing right here and the master rubric decreasing right here. So these words are pre-populated in the rubric. Let's go down to the decreasing targets. The same thing. We have these common decreasing targets that are linked to the master rubric decreasing. And so what happens is when you use one of these drop-down menus and select the word as one of the increasing targets or decreasing targets, that informs TPS that you're using one of the words that are in these master rubrics, increasing and decreasing, and it will then create a rubric for you on one of these tabs. So let's see how that actually looks. Okay, I've selected respect from my list. I've selected quality and quantity of work from my list. And social skills with peers I've selected from my list. And the same thing for the decreasing targets. There's verbal aggression, physical aggression to others, and so forth. Okay, I'm still going to put in these priority focused behaviors. These words are also going to be added to the rubric, as it says right here. These will be added to the rubric. So let's take now a look at the rubric. First, let's look at the master rubric increasing and decreasing, and then we'll see how it all comes together on these rubric tabs. The master rubric increasing has all of those words that show up on those drop-down menu from setup. So when we go to setup, these words right here, all of these words here, are listed on the master rubric. And you are welcome to change any of this. We give you a head start. What is a 4? What is a 3? What is a 2? What is a 1? Now I try to keep these behaviors general because the specific focus behaviors you're going to enter those on the setup tab. And you're going to make the rubric specific to a particular student. Now there may be some general themes that you're going to duplicate from one student to the next, but we want you to be able to take the general idea of what each of these increasing targets say for a 4, 3, a 2, a 1, a 0, and we make them more specific on the section here that's the priority focus behaviors. All right, let's go back to the master rubric increasing. If there was a word or a target behavior that you wanted to add, just scroll down and add it right here. And you can type it in, and then you would type in what is a 4, what is a 3, what is a 2, what is a 1, and what is a 0. And then you could use these examples here. You kind of follow the format. You can see what we do. This is a very high level. This is a high level. This is a moderate level. This is a low level. This is a very low to 0 level. That's the format that you would use to create a new rubric item. Now, these are very common increasing targets, and for the decreasing targets, the same thing. You might find that the increasing and decreasing targets that you want to use are already here, but if not, you can go ahead and add that. Okay, so let's go back to setup. You've selected from your drop-down menu these increasing targets and decreasing targets, and you've added your priority focus behaviors for your increasing and decreasing targets. And again, these are going to show up on your IEP goal, but they also show up on the rubric. So let's click on rubric. And what that does is it goes into setup and say, well, what behaviors have you selected? Well, you selected respect, quality and quantity of work, social skills with peers, and as you can see here, the fourth increasing target has not been selected. We leave that blank right here. So that blank is represented here. And we have 4 decreasing target behaviors. And so what this does is looks into setup, selects the increasing and decreasing target behaviors, or I should say it links to setup, and obtains that information from the setup tab as to the increasing and decreasing targets, and then it creates the rubric. So what's actually going on is it's saying, well, what word did you choose? Oh, I chose respect. Oh, okay, respect is in the master rubric, and here's where it is. Let's take a look. When we scroll down to respect, here are the different designations for a 4, a 3, a 2, and 1, a 0 for respect. And so when we go to the rubric, it's selecting all of this text based on the increasing target of respect that was on setup. So there it is, respect. It pulls it in from the master rubric increasing, and it does the same for each increasing target. Same for the decreasing, except this time it's now going to look at the master rubric decreasing. It says, oh, you selected verbal aggression on your setup tab for a decreasing target behavior. So when you go here, it's going to find that word and find the text that's associated with verbal aggression for a 4, a 3, a 2, a 1, a 0. It's going to do that from the master rubric. And then when you can go to print it, in this case it will be on 2 pages, and there is your rubric for TPS. Okay, so let's just take a quick review. You can just type in words here and identify the specific behaviors that are going to be aligned with each of these words, and be done with that. And then it shows up on, these words will appear in the IEP goal. The next level is to actually use the rubric feature, and so use the drop-down menu to select one of the words, and if you have a need to record behavior that's not listed here, you can enter it in the master rubric, increasing or decreasing, and put that right in, and so then it will appear on the setup tab, because when you hit this down arrow, it'll just be right on the bottom there. Okay, and you still are going to put your priority focus behaviors, and once you've selected a word from the drop-down menu, we know that it's going to be in the rubric, or it's going to link to the master rubric. So when you click on your rubric tab, there it is. Now the 0 to 3 rubric does exactly the same thing. It just limits it to a rating of 3. Same words. Okay, so a lot of new functionality for the middle and high school version. A couple other things, some housekeeping things I want to bring up because they have come up a lot. The the online version does not show online version of TPS does not show when the recording periods do not match the tab names. Those have to match exactly in order for data to be graphed. Now, when you open up TPS using the desktop app, which you have to do, of course, to graph your data, if you go to one of the graphs, you might find that, could be any graph, you might find that the data are not populating, and you wonder why. Well, most of the time, like 99% of the time, it's because there is some mismatch between the recording periods that are listed here and the tab names. Now, how would you know that there's a mismatch? Well, sometimes it's obvious. You can just look and see that they're quite different. But TPS has a way to help you out with that. So let's say in period 1, I'm just going to put RR next to it just to make it different. Okay, and so you can see what happens is when there's a mismatch, it changes to red type. Say, oh, that doesn't match anymore. I see that. Okay, I must have entered that by mistake. All right, so period 1 RR doesn't match period 1. And so when you go to setup, if your data are not graphing properly, go to setup, and of course this only works in the desktop app. Go and see if there's any red items listed. Now, all you have to do then is say, oh, I entered those two R's by mistake, so I get rid of them. And once I've done that, they match again. And then your data will graph appropriately. Now, there's something else that happens a lot that is a little sneaky. Sometimes, you can see the cursor is right next to the 1 up here. Sometimes, when we enter recording periods, we inadvertently put a space. See, I just did that. I put a space right after that. Now, when I hit enter, it looks like they match, right? Period 1, period 1. But you see, there's this invisible space listed on period 1, and it's making it not match, which will make the graphs not work. So when I click back here, I still don't see it, but if I click up here to the formula bar, which makes that field active, you can see the space between that flashing vertical cursor and period 1. So I'm going to use the backspace to get rid of that, and I'm going to hit enter, and now it matches, and it'll return to black. So if you see any red recording periods, those are the ones you need to fix by taking a look at them and seeing if there's if they look the same. It's probably that space. Now sometimes the space is down here, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to put a space right there, and we go back to setup, and it shows that it's a mismatch. And I go, oh, what's wrong here? If I click over here, I go, well, there's no space there. Well, then there's probably a space here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click on that, which makes it active, and you can see again that space. I'm going to hit the backspace key to remove it, and then I'm going to hit enter to close it, and now when I go back, it matches. Okay. The next housekeeping item is this plus key right here, and if you click on that, which I'm going to do right now, it adds a blank sheet. And you probably have seen that, some of you have seen that in your TPS, where there are these multiple sheets that are added that don't have anything in it. And so that's what that plus does. And the reason it does that, I'm going to get rid of it. The reason it does that is because in order to modify these tab names, the TPS has to be unlocked. But after you've created a TPS for a student where you've entered the recording periods and put the teacher's names if you want to do that, and the class periods, whatever, and matched them up to these tab names, go to Review and then go to Protect Workbook. And don't put a password, just hit OK. And what that does is it locks TPS so that this plus sign doesn't do anything, and then also so that no one inadvertently changes the names of these tabs, because you can't change them. It says workbook is protected. Now if you do want to change something, you just go back to Review and unprotect it by just clicking it again. So I'm going to click it back on, and you always know if it's grayed out like that, it means that it's protected. So that's a wonderful thing to do after you have configured a TPS file and before you share it with teachers for entering data. And the final thing is, particularly in the middle and high school, we don't need all 10 recording periods. My recommendation is if you do have extra recording periods, just leave them there. And the reason is if you delete these, then they're hard to replace. So it's best to just leave them there, and if you need them, you have them available. These are going to be changed to whatever the names of the academic blocks or the teacher's names, and just leave period 9 and 10 if that's what it is, or 8, 9, and 10, and they're just there as placeholders in case you need them. And so it's best to not remove them. Okay, well that was a lot. I hope that you enjoy these new features, the rubric writer and the event codes, and also the new word wrap in notes. As always, if you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, lewis.weber@sarasotacountyschools.net. And thank you for your attention to this training video, and I hope you enjoy using this new version.